So it's a known secret at this point that the FIA, which is of course Formula One's governing body, has been very keen to add new teams to the grid, because that's really been a push on behalf of the FIA. And there's a reason we're saying that, because now news has come in that, well, 2 new teams could very well be given that approval to join the grid as early as 2025.
I mean, it's incredible what's happening at this moment right now, because we have received reports that FIA is very close to green lighting 2 teams to join the F1 grid in 2025, which is quite surprising, because ever since this concept or this idea was talked about, the F1 teams, the existing F1 teams have been very against it.
Yeah, they've been very against it, and I can understand why. Because of course Formula One is going through an era of a massive popularity boom.
Yes.
They're making a lot of money, and the 10 teams, the stability that the 10 teams have enjoyed has actually made all of them profitable entities. So the real question is, it does seem like this is very much an FIA push and not something that Formula One wants. And we'll discuss all of the things, but the main crux is that, first off, are you running the risk of a civil war yet again? And we've seen this happen in Formula One before. It's nothing new. We've had instances in the past where the teams have threatened to pretty much just walk out and form a rebel series. Are we going down that path again? Before we answer that question, first let's talk about the 2 teams really which actually got, or which are rumored to be getting that green light. Andretti, which is no surprise considering I think Mohammed Ben Sulayem, the FIA chief, has been a big fan of that bid. And the other, rather surprisingly, High Tech.
Yes. I mean, it's going to be quite interesting to see, because Andretti is being backed by Cadillac.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a very American.
Yeah, it's like an American team with an American.
This is like the.
It's so American.
It's so American. It doesn't get more American than this.
It's so American. They'll probably launch the team on July 4th. I mean, they could. Who knows? It's so American that maybe their logo will be the bald eagle. I have a lot of these.
I don't know, the stars or...
Stars and the stripes. Yeah. They're so American, they might finally get Colton Herta to drive in F1.
Oh.
I mean, considering he's an Andretti driver in Indy, could very well happen if he gets the super license points. But obviously with Andretti, not that much of a surprise. High Tech, little bit more so, considering the fact that this is a team that in recent times have been predominantly restricted to F2 and F3, if I'm not wrong. More in the junior race categories, kind of a team like, say, Prima, which is also well known in the junior categories, but in the juniors only. Of course, they did recently get a new owner, I think, and he's invested significant levels of cash. So that's probably the reason why they're getting this bid, I'm guessing.
Yeah, also, and I think since they've been so successful at the F2 and F3 level, maybe that's why they're looking to, get into F1 as well. And I don't, as a viewer, as a fan of Formula One, I don't see any problem, having more teams in the paddock or on the grid. But
you know who does have problems though?
Everyone.
The new teams.
Yeah.
The existing teams, rather, the 10 teams.
Yeah, exactly.
And see, it's twofold the reasons why.
Yes.
One, all of them now are sustainable, and B, and this is where really I think a lot of people are accusing them of greed, is that for new teams to join, there's something called an anti-dilution fund that needs to be paid to the existing teams.
Yeah.
That anti-dilution fund is set at 200 million. The 200 million would then be evenly split among the 10 teams, which means every team gets $20 million. The problem is F1 teams have realized that the profitability right now in F1 is so high that other teams are willing to pay more money, which is why they have been wanting that the anti-dilution fund be increased. That's just, I mean,
yes, F1 teams are quite, running an F1 team is as expensive as it can be.
It's an expensive sport.
It's a very expensive sport, and to manage a team, it takes a lot of funds. And I understand where they're coming from, since new teams coming in will mean sharing of revenue, sharing of business, whatever happens after that. And it might just cut their profits.
Yeah, it will.
Even if it's a 10 million loss, it's still a big amount of money. And teams like Haas, teams like Alfa Romeo need that money. And but okay, and this is something that Stefano Domenicali has also,
the CEO of F1,
the CEO of F1 has also talked about that it's an expensive sport, and he understands where the team owners are coming from, and he understands their insecurity as well. And Toto, I think a few races ago, also talked about it and said that there's not enough space not quite literally. Not
No, he actually did say it in a literal sense also. He did. He said that, the paddocks around the world right now are optimized for 10 teams.
That's true.
So you would have to kind of be making those changes and it would be a problem. But of course, that sounds like a very small problem to have.
Yeah, you can just build.
Yeah, you can just, extend the
also,
space.
Also, MotoGP has more than 10.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I mean, in recent memory only, if I'm not wrong, I think in 2014, 15 types also, F1 had 12 teams at one point in time.
Yes.
So it's nothing new. It's not a new concept. In fact, in the good days of the 70s and 80s, you would have so many teams that Formula One had a concept called pre-qualifying.
Oh.
That's a real thing, by the way. So there were teams that would
qualify for the qualifiers.
So have you ever wondered in recent times you've seen that they have a 103% lap time. So that's an optimal time. Do you know where that exists from? It exists from the days of pre-qualifying. So basically some of the slower teams, to ensure they weren't running on Saturday qualifying, you'd have pre-qualifying on Friday, and if those teams couldn't match that 103% lap time, they weren't allowed into qualifying. That's where it comes from.
That's an interesting idea, by the way. We could.
I don't think you'd need it now, considering you have only so few teams. This was back in a time when you would have 16, 17 teams.
Oh, that's a lot.
So basically, even no-hopers who'd get their hands on old chassis and just get an engine, put it in and run. Yeah. In the days of when it wasn't as professionalized, you'd have pre-qualifying. Of course, now you won't be needing it.
But this debate aside altogether, that the teams are very expensive to run, whatever. But also, I think the teams are being very selfish about this.
Yeah, this is entirely being done out of self-interest, and I get it. F1 has a history of that. I don't know if you remember this, but in the early parts of the 2009-10 time, when the new regulations had come in, there was some sort of a gentleman's agreement that was put in place to ensure that teams wouldn't spend more than an X amount. So basically, a budget cap without it being an official budget cap. And in fact, recently when the budget cap was pushed through and everything, Ross Brawn, who was also one of the top level guys at F1 in that point, he said that the gentleman's agreement at that time fell through because in F1 there are no such thing as gentlemen.
Exactly.
So he couldn't put it any better. He couldn't put it any better. He said very clearly, he's saying, if you have the chance to move forward and by spending more and you have the resources, nothing is going to stop you.
Yeah, why not?
So that is...
Yeah, I think they're being extremely selfish at this point because, it's sort of become, with big teams like Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, it's become a monopoly at this point since, they own all the resources, they have all the big guys, they have all the best people on the grid just for themselves, right? And since they have the resources, they can be selfish about it. And now we're looking at it, I mean, they're trying to, resist new teams from coming in, but what they do not realize, I think they realize this, but the new teams also have, a good amount of funds and a good value.
And they bring value to the sport. That's what's important.
If a team like Audi is coming in, imagine the kind of funds they have.
And in fact, for that matter, even a team like Andretti, if you're talking about legacy American teams, Andretti is coming in, bringing in a new American brand in Cadillac, who've never been in F1 before, by the way. Never ever. They are being convinced to come into the grid. That's a big thing. That itself shows you just how popular F1 is getting right now. And you want to be capitalizing on that and not kind of making it a boys club or an exclusive club where only a very few select elite are allowed. You don't want that. If F1 is becoming more popular, you need to be bringing in or welcoming in more teams. And look, I get it, okay, in the past there have been a lot of F1 teams that have come and just been frittered away. It happens. But I think in today's day and age, you have a cost cap in place, you have the sustainability rules in place. I think it's much easier to invest, but also not spend yourselves to death. Like I remember when Toyota came in, they were probably the most expensive F1 team to have never won a race because they invested close to $1 billion, couldn't get a race win. And then eventually with the financial meltdown that came, the recession in 2008-9, they pulled out of the sport. So I get it. Manufacturers can be fickle. We've seen it. In fact, we've seen it happen with BMW. In fact, if you want to trace the decline of Williams to where they are now, it started with them being BMW Williams in the early 2000s. BMW wanted more control. Frank Williams said no. So they eventually ended the partnership, bought Sauber, who they could control, and then once the recession hit, they also left. So even Sauber, by the way, which is currently the Alfa Romeo team, very nearly went into ruin because of the entire BMW thing. They were so badly hit by financial ruin. So, I understand there being a, let's say, reluctance. because very few teams will be like, say, a Red Bull. I mean, consistently, whatever said and done, Red Bull, the energy drinks company, has invested a lot of money into that team. Mercedes parent company has invested a lot of money to ensure that the team is competitive and also give them a free hand. Same can be said about Red Bull. Are we going to see that from other manufacturers? We don't know. Is there a guarantee that an Andretti comes in and adds instant quality? No, but you have to give them a chance, right?
Yeah, and there's this one question I have is how are these two teams, Andretti and High Tech, coming in 2025 if they do, which is I think pretty much happening by this point? Because
I mean, I don't know if it will, because again, the final say, remember, is with the F1 teams and not the FIA.
Ferrari has the veto power.
Ferrari has not just a veto power, it has the special veto power because it's the only legacy team in Formula 1. So if it really comes down to it, the entire plans can just be blown by Ferrari using that veto power.
Yes, exactly.
And I don't think it's going to even come to that because no team seems to be on board with newer teams at this point. No one. Actually, no, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. Just one team, Alpine. You know why? Because they'll be supplying engines. So
yeah. So my question is, how are these two, if they do coming in 2025, while Audi comes in 2026?
So there's an answer to that. It's because Audi are looking to enter when the new engine regulations kick in.
Yeah.
So the engine regulations kick in 26.
But how does it make, how is it viable for Andretti and High Tech to come in
a season before?
A year before.
Yeah, I think that's because they won't be building new engines. They'll probably take a customer engine. Andretti, it's a known fact that they're going to be looking for a Renault deal, which is why of the 9 teams, the only team that has been consistently backing because they'll get to sell an engine. And selling that engine, by the way, it's a practical thing that actually helps teams raise money because those customer deals are not cheap. So that's the one reason I think if even High Tech are coming in, it's viable to think that they'd probably be taking a Renault engine as well, because I think Ferrari are good right now. They have 3 teams including their works team. Mercedes have 4 teams including their works teams. So Renault really is the only engine manufacturer on the grid right now that doesn't have another team buying their engine. So I think they'll be taking those engines. Maybe that's why, because they're not going to be building a new engine from scratch. With Audi, they are building an entirely new F1 engine. So that's why they've targeted 26.
Along with it.
Exactly.
So that's going to be a tough job for Audi, by the way.
It's going to be a tough job for any other team. Like, for instance, this is something that we can debate about another time. It came to me just now, is that Christian Horner has been very vocal about voicing his concerns at the 2026 engine regulations, saying it will take F1 down in a bad direction.
Is Red Bull struggling with the new
that's what Toto Wolff said. He said that they're probably not being able to build a good engine. That's why they're saying it. Yeah. Again, as I said, F1 is probably one of the most self-interest serving sports ever.
Yeah, of course. If I was Red Bull and you were Mercedes and the regulations were suiting my personal choices or my build style more, then why would I be complaining, right?
Exactly. But if they're not, then you're going to be raising a voice about it. It's why Mercedes was so vocal about the ride heights and everything, because it wasn't suiting their cars. They wanted to stop the porpoising.
It's funny and so dramatic at the same time.
Exactly. And because they're putting on an act.
Yeah.
With them, I know for a fact that Toto and Horn are probably not 2 guys who'll ever go out for dinner. But they are 2 sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
When it suits them, they'll be mourning. When it doesn't suit them, they'll be the ones laughing. So that's just how F1 is. But back to this. Is there really a risk, do you think, of the FIA annoying F1 even more? Because again, from what I know, F1 is already not very happy. You'd remember there was that whole ban on jewelry and political statements and stuff like that, which
Lewis.
Also, in fact, Lewis has that nose ring. He said, I'm not removing it. I'll keep paying the fines. In fact, he turned up to this thing wearing extra rings.
It's not going to hurt his pockets any.
No, it's not going to hurt his pockets, but I think it rubbed a lot of F1 people the wrong way.
You know what? It's a symbolic stance from him.
Yeah.
He's standing up against it.
Yeah.
He doesn't care about the fines. Obviously, it's a sign of protest.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing. The FIA, the new regime, was meant to kind of smooth things over based on what was going on with the last regime. It's done the exact opposite. So for me, if the FIA keep pushing this thing of getting 2 new teams in, and remember the final call lies with Liberty Media and F1 stakeholders, not the FIA. I think you're going to be risking seeing something pretty cataclysmic. If that's just my take on it, I don't know.
Yeah, I think a similar civil war kind of situation is on the cards with this, because we've seen and we've heard, you know, team principals talk about it very explicitly that they do not want.
Fred Vasseur was very
very against the idea. So we've seen, you know, these principals, CEOs, everyone talking about how they do not want any more teams on the F1 grid. So if something like that happens, I think a Ferrari veto power will just end the conversation.
They won't even need it. No team.
Yeah, but you see, it doesn't really. I don't think, you know, FIA is going to ask for consent before.
No, but they have to. See, they can say that, okay, these two new teams want to enter, but you know, just because they want to enter doesn't mean F1 has to let them.
But FIA has the power.
No, they don't. The final say for
So
new teams
will
entering
with the
rests with
F1.
Formula 1.
Okay.
That's the thing. Remember, Formula 1, our FIA doesn't take decisions in terms of these kind of things.
Yes.
Commercial rights or anything relating to the commercial rights are taken by the commercial rights holders. So in this case, are Liberty.
Yeah,
but it
so
will
I
cause
think-
problems. It will cause problems.
I think it's going to happen now, and we're going to see a civil war sort of situation.
Yeah,
So
that's the worry. So I hope,
huge.
I mean, look, let's be fair, all of us, and I think most F1 fans would love to see more teams. But if the teams themselves aren't very keen, probably wisest not to be pushing this. But that's just how we feel. How do you guys feel? You can let us know that in the comments below. And please don't forget, if you enjoyed this video, like it, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, tap that bell icon, follow us across social media, and
don't forget to download the Sportster app.
plus, if you're already on the channel, go ahead, check out some other videos that we've done. For now though, from Gargi and me, it's goodbye.